Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got with me a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
On today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing the EFL Cup Final plus the weekend's Premier League games. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. Lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Let's get started, guys. Of course, the first one we're going to cover is the big one, the EFL Cup Final. We have yet another title for Liverpool. Liverpool winning on the day in added time. A game where, honestly, there's a lot of chances, but of course, I'm sure we'll hear from Mac. It was again another 0-0 going into extra time, and so it finished 0-0 in regulation. Though I feel like this time around, of course, both teams were very much different from the teams that played 2 years ago. Whole new Chelsea side, and of course Liverpool with a lot of new players coming through as well due to injuries. But overall, I think it was an entertaining game for a neutral. Of course, Liverpool ended up winning, but yeah, Gio, let me hear your thoughts on this game.
I don't. I think we kind of called it in the last podcast that we were able to record. I think the disappointment is that Chelsea couldn't outperform and the joke of the internet is an academy side, which a lot of it is like they are younger, less experienced players that were on the pitch, and again, did they outperform Chelsea? No, but did Chelsea outperform them? Definitely not. Given the team sheet that they had and the depth of subs they had, they still couldn't pull it together. These are guys with so much experience playing first team football up against pretty much Virgil van Dijk and Simicas and just a couple of your average first team players on Liverpool. None of your key guys, your key offensive players are there, and Chelsea still couldn't take advantage of that. I don't know if that was a shock, or I don't know if anybody took it as a shock, but it was definitely the key talking point. We all expected Klopp to have a game plan, and I think it going as long as possible did work out in their favor. No matter how long it went on, as Chelsea couldn't score, Chelsea got progressively more frustrated, and it showed. They rushed a lot of chances near the end. Tempers started to flare a little more. So yeah, I think, like I said last podcast, the better manager definitely won the game, and I think that statement still holds true here.
I feel like, yeah, no, with regards to the experience on the Liverpool end, even though there was a lot of injuries and a lot of players were missing, a lot of for sure first team players, still the fact that the players that were available, your Van Dijk, Konate, even Kelleher, who has played in this competition and won it before, Robertson as well, it that gave I think Liverpool a little bit of an edge, even though they didn't have as many first team players compared to Chelsea. I would say the fact that they are also in a transition period, I would have gave Liverpool the slight edge, but it turned out, of course, it wasn't. It was actually a very, very even game until, of course, certain things happened, and like you said, the game plan for Liverpool it continued the same, up even when the younger players eventually were thrown onto the pitch, and it showed that even though they were younger players coming through, the game plan's still there. Whereas for Chelsea, the game plan may or may not have stayed the same throughout. But Mac, let's hear your thoughts on the game as well.
I feel like you have to break it up into a couple of different pieces. And towards starting lineup, I would say the Gravenberch injury, and then of course at a time for breaking three different phases. If you look at the starting 11, a lot of them talking about how the young kids, of course, of Liverpool beat this Chelsea team. Average age was in fact older at the beginning of the game as well as at the end of the game. I think the disparity comes, and why there was such that sort of large separation is after the Gravenberch injury. What you had to see is where Harvey Elliott had to drop into midfield in that midfield three with Endo alongside McAllister. Not an ideal Liverpool midfield three we're looking to be able to press. And that's why you saw Endo, he played very well, but he felt so exposed at the same time playing with that midfield too. And you have a fullback playing as a right winger based off the adjustment. So it's based off the depth of the bench. So initially Liverpool should have had it going into the beginning of the game, should have been the favorites based on starting lineups. After that change, Chelsea it should have been a trigger for them to realize, okay, yeah, this midfield is weak. We can potentially expose them because there's going to be a whole lot of space if we can kind of draw Endo out. And that continuously happened, but they didn't take their chances. They weren't clinical in their moments. And players that like Gallagher, who had a lot of energy, Cole Palmer, Sterling, could to be tuck in. And if you look at their average position on the pitch, they were so centralized to eventually expose that lack of, I would say, a midfield that Liverpool had. They just didn't do enough. Then going where, okay, by the end of 90 minutes, fair. They should still be the favorites. They're going into the game, the added time, probably on the up and up, feeling like they'd be able to take their chances, feeling like they're going to at least get 3 or 4 chances in the added time to, again, take the lead that we don't have to worry about pens, to where Klopp, because of the necessity, they're playing in so many competitions, they're in so many injuries, you have to bring these young kids on, the academy players, on, which is, again, it's a tough position, but you saw kind of, his passion, the joy, kind of his wanting to be able to do it and understanding the circumstance and giving them the position to embrace it. So credit to the kids to be able to do that. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know half of these players. I still don't know half these players that came on for Liverpool. Full credit to them, but Same. It's definitely done. Chelsea should be looked at as an embarrassment of how they performed in that at a time. Because if you look at the end of the game, in terms of a starting 11 for Liverpool, how many players would play regularly for a Premier League, in a Premier League squad for Liverpool week in, week out? Van Dijk, Diaz, that's about it at the end of the game. So realistically, Chelsea should and did have the better lineup, but they were kind of twisting on, like, kind of tripping over their own feet and creating these opportunities. And when they finally did have some, and different moments throughout the game, Kelleher was there to be able to stop them, but they should have done so much more. So if, for me, again, the right team won in terms of the overall game of how the play went out. The couple things went in their favor. Maybe we'll talk about some flashpoint moments, but I think Chelsea should be very embarrassed of how those stages of the game worked out, and they could have easily gone around it if they made better decisions, if they played up to the level that they should expect of themselves reaching the final. But I think full credit to Liverpool, where it's a depleted squad, and they still managed to come out with the win. And you still managed to get that first trophy of the potential quad, of course, on the board. So lovely to see. Great game, full of emotions. But again, as Ray alluded to earlier, I'm tired of seeing these two teams play against each other. I'm done. I don't want any more of it. Too much Chelsea, Liverpool. Done with the nil-nils of these two teams. I'm done. I'm over.
Okay. Well, yeah, I do have to point out, it was a very close game still. It was ultimately one goal that separated them. And it's really, and of course, a big part of how Liverpool were able to stay in the game. I feel like, I think Jerry mentioned that Chelsea, of course, had more shots overall in the game, but Kelleher came up huge for Liverpool in circumstances, and of course, Van Dijk ultimately denied the first goal it was called back. I think it was on a foul or offside situation, and then ultimately getting the goal. But for Chelsea, they're not going to finish in the likely top 8 this season. Had a chance to win a trophy here, Gio. Unfortunately, we're not able to. And the manner of, I guess, the defeat and who they lost against ultimately will put questions on Pochettino and the squad here. So I guess, Gio, walk us through maybe some initial reactions that some Chelsea fans may have, or what do you think overall from what's going to happen with this Chelsea team?
I think it has to be Poch out. And not that I don't agree. No, not that I don't think Poch is a great manager. I think at the end of the day, like we've talked about plenty of times before, it is a business, and business is that based on the money spent on. Even if you didn't watch the game and you just heard the statistic of based on the starting 11 or all the players' salaries combined on that pitch for Liverpool that day compared to the salaries that were spent on the Chelsea players that day, would probably be astonishing. The difference in value of players, quote unquote, monetary value of players, that you couldn't beat this Liverpool side, which it was probably your best opportunity to beat this Liverpool side, if any time, any point in the season, this would be the best time, the absolute best time. This would have been the game where Poch, puts not necessarily his best guys, but has come up with a plan, top to bottom, left and right, ready to execute. If it were to go to extra time, if it were to go to penalties, he should have had a plan for it. But it just didn't seem like it. It didn't seem like they were ready. It didn't seem like, they had the composure. Like we said, yes, they had more shots on target, but yes, it forced Liverpool keeper to have great saves, but you just couldn't cross that line. And I think every player and including Poch should feel very disappointed. And I don't think he will be in this seat, say, next season.
Ooh, well, of course you have to question it. And so, Mac, I guess same question about that, considering, the circumstances for Chelsea not looking like it's going to be a successful season, quote unquote. What would you define what would you predict would happen next for Chelsea?
It's tough for me to be able to single individually Poch, because I do think top down and in a lot of ways even bottom up, their approach for the club has been a little bit twisted in terms of it's gotten where they've gotten them, but the rotation of managers, kind of the culture, the template of how they structure out play, it's changed so many times. It's hard to find consistency, and without a certain consistent measure of how we want to approach games, how can you build up confidence, right? Where just by rotating in new players, they're hoping that could be able to make the drastic change, and those players haven't had the impact that they would want yet. Because if you look at, I would argue, in certain moments, their style of play, the way they're able to amass expected goals, is comparable with a lot of the better teams in the Premier League. It's the confidence and the consistency to be able to take those chances, and that's what they're missing. So does that mean we need to be able to get kind of a big striker, big name striker, to be able to kind of close some of those gaps to make them feel a little bit more comfortable? Maybe. Do they need to change manners or change their approach? I don't necessarily think that was going to help them. I think that only kind of sets them back to ground zero. And now, even if they do spend the money to be able to bring in another striker, they're back to where they were started in some ways if it doesn't work out. So I feel like you got to be able to give him more time, for good or for bad, at least I would say until midway through next year, so you can give him the opportunity to see if they can be able to fix this, because the Rolodex of just consistently changing managers, I think, is a template that Chelsea definitely implemented to their great success. But I think if they continue to do that, they're going to be in tough positions. And we've seen that with clubs in other leagues, like Bayern and Munich, making changes consistently. And now it's coming back to bite them in the ass a little bit. So I feel like give them a little bit more time, see if they can fix some of the holes on their starting 11. It's weird to say that you spent so much money and you still have so many holes, but I feel like they do. If you're able to address a couple of those key areas, you have a template to be successful. And I wouldn't be surprised if this team, let's say going into next season, if they sign, let's give an example, throw out two names. If they sign Aaron Ramsdale and Victor Osimhen combined, let's say 180 million pounds, and they're in the top 6 conversation this time next year, would I be surprised? No, absolutely not. They have the ability on the pitch, in the bench, to be able to do that. And if they just close a couple of gaps, they could get there. And I feel like if they spend that money one more time under Pochettino, full frontal from what he wants to be able to do, then at that point you can kind of move on and move past him. It's interesting though, he still hasn't won a trophy in England, which again, in all likelihood, does that continue till next year? He probably won't one, probably, but you can at least build a template from something from him. So I don't think they make any changes now. I don't think they should make any changes, and if they do, they're just going to be right back where they started.
So I agree with both of you as well. I don't think there is a change that needs to be made, but just the inconsistency. Just a couple weeks ago, they almost got a win away at Chelsea, City. This game, they're struggling to really even look like the better team against a team that's lacking a lot in terms of first team quality. So, of course, we're going to continue talking about them. But speaking of consistency, we're going to move on to a team that has been very consistent. Mac, I think it's 6 wins in the Premier League out of 6 out of the last 6. Arsenal, of course, most recently beat Newcastle at home 4-1, flexing their offensive output again, scoring upwards of 3 goals, and it really did look like it was just the team that is continuing to challenge versus a team that's kind of iffy. Are they going to be mid-table? Looks like Newcastle won't challenge for the top 6 this year, especially after this performance. But got to give credit to Arsenal. Mac, what were your overall thoughts on the game?
Again, I thought it was an absolute necessary step. I think going into this run of games where they've been facing the Newcastles, the West Hams, where we had talked about where this is potential run of form where they need to be able to pick up every point conceivable because a lot of their competition in terms of Man City, Liverpool have games piling up. They need to be able to at least keep pace or match pace or gain some ground going into the game, which will be March 31st at the Etihad Stadium facing Man City. And I think if they can keep up the winning streak up until then, they'll be in a good position to feel confident and potentially take something out of that game. But to go back to this individual game, it was a great performance again, kind of what they've done before in a lot of ways, where even similar to the beginning of last year, where they felt very much like they blitzed Newcastle with the pressure, with the intensity, on the front foot, winning the ball back in their opponent's defensive third and creating opportunities from there. And once it kind of got those first 2 goals came in so quickly, it seemed like Newcastle floundered quite a bit. The game, they should have even been up by more. Havertz missed a breakaway. Martinelli missed a couple of key chances. There were more opportunities there for the players to even pile on more to get that goal difference even higher. So overall, great performance. It keeps them on pace with their title contenders. So it's very, very important. They have two more games before they play, as I said, back-to-back games against Chelsea and then Man City. Do they keep this kind of form running? I think is vitally important going into those 2 fixtures. So overall, great result. Did what they needed to do, but the consistency for them will be key going into those fixtures.
And for exactly that, the consistency have this show that they've showed over the last, of course, probably month and a half now, is what's driving them. And I don't know if we've really had a chance, us 3, to really discuss the title race that has come down to now, of course, Liverpool, Man City, and Chelsea in that order in the Premier League. But Gio, I guess same question to you. Of course, it must be impressive and shows Arsenal's character now this season that they're able to put away Newcastle so convincingly, and of course continue to chase down the cities and Liverpools. What are your thoughts there, Gio?
No, absolutely. I think Arsenal played a fantastic game. Just overwhelmed them with the offensive power that they know they possess. So, even yes, we talk about how strong they've been offensively, but defensively sound, holding shape, I think has been overlooked. This game, they're forcing Newcastle to make a lot of side to side passes as opposed to front and back passes that typically were to create those offensive threats, but they kept Newcastle to 0 corners, and so they kept them at bay, and they kept them more so out along the wings, which they couldn't get into the middle to create any of those chances. So I think that point of the game was kind of overlooked. I think strategically, Arteta executed the game quite perfectly. Yes, they scored a goal, but was it really important? I think no, in the grand scheme of things, no, because of even if they scored 2, I think Arsenal would feel hard done because they performed so well, but I don't think they were goals that are like, oh, it's because Arsenal kind of collapsed here. There was no real collapse. They were just opportunities, and yes, there are opportunities that were taken. They got a goal out of it, fine, whatever. But I think overall, Arsenal really has to pat themselves on the back here. Newcastle still, in my books, are a tough play, no matter who you are, given the players, given what they have put out in the past. So games like this against Newcastle, who are struggling, can't often be overlooked.
Okay, well, on that note, I love how Gio mentioned, of course, the stat that Newcastle had 0 corners. And Gio, Mac, I'm going to throw it to you quickly because I've seen a quote on Twitter recently that Arsenal fans are now celebrating corners because they had 9 corners in this game. Of course, scored 2 of those corners. And recently, it has been, I guess, a new trend that Arsenal taking advantage of those set pieces. So a word on that, Mac?
I definitely, it's important. one of the key talking points that came out that was funny was Sean Dyche was talking in terms of the percentage of goals that they score from set pieces. It's like, oh, no one complains when Arsenal does it, but when we do it, oh, blah, 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 it's all horrible and bad. So it's good where Arsenal previously before, they could only really beat you in one way. When we're talking about towards the end of the Arsene Wenger era where it was full, fluid, total football, that's all they had. But when the games got a little bit gritty, a little bit dirty, can they win ugly? Did they have kind of that, let's shove 6 guys into the box and potentially create a little bit of mayhem and get that goal? They didn't really have that in the locker. This team does. They're a big team. When something that Ray, we talked about previously on our podcast, where if you have Declan Rice 6'2", taking your corners, you must have good enough options in the box, really not even to worry about him being in there. So I think what they've done is kind of adjust that change coming back from the holiday break that we talked about, and they're able to put their center halves, because now they're not just playing really with 3, Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel. Now if Jakub Kiwior is stepping in to be able to do that, and Ben White's now the inverted fullback. Now you have really 4 burly big center halves that are going in and to be able to compete for these corners alongside Havertz, where that's a really competitive position to be able to put people in. And I feel like that's something that against these away games that are coming up, like at Man City, that can be a very big difference maker where, hey, if we keep them out and we just get those set piece opportunities, we have a great opportunity. Of course, we want to try to control the game in their manner, but if they don't, they have that other kind of tool in their tool belt to still kind of, eke out a goal. So I think it's been a big difference for them. But the good part is that nowadays, because prior to the end of the season, mid-season, it was really just that was keeping them afloat. Now it's where you're seeing those open play goals, like that Kai Havertz goal and the opportunity to be able to create that breakaway. That's been the difference. If you're able to create that as well, now you're not just winning the game 1-0. You're winning that game 4-1. You're winning that game 5-0, because it just kind of feels like an avalanche coming at you if you're having Arsenal attack you in all those different ways. So great to see. Long may it rain, of course, from my perspective, but I definitely feel like that's been an elevation tool of why they've stayed in the title race and why they're still a threat to, of course, win the title.
Yeah, of course. And so we're going to take a quick break here, but just wanted to mention, of course, on the flip side, Gio mentioned it already, Newcastle just unfortunately not looking... on their day, there will be definitely a difficult team to beat, but 10th place now, even Wolves and West Ham, who've got wins over the last couple of days, have leapfrogged them, and then it's Chelsea chasing them down. So not great for them, but we'll of course cover them more closely as the season goes on. But let's take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back covering some more Premier League action. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now discussing another game that took place this weekend. Gio, a team that you're, of course, have an allegiance to, Manchester United, lost to Fulham at home, 2-1 the score. A game that, when we previewed it, we were heavily looking at it from a Man U perspective. Of course, a great start to 2024, and it looked like they were just continuing with that form into this game against Fulham that we're gonna be without Paulinho. Actually, it didn't turn out that way, and actually Fulham did play really well and really gave a good account of themselves on the day. What are your overall thoughts on this game, Gio?
Pain, pure pain. Struggled to score in the first half. Rashford starting up top. Of course, no Hodgson, who's going to be out for the foreseeable future, which is quite disappointing, obviously, given the run that Man U have been on. And it just goes to show what the necessity of having a out-and-out striker is in that role, because the Rashford at striker experiment has happened before, and obviously hasn't worked. That's why, one, they've been looking for a striker in Hodgson, and then still looking for a backup striker for times like these, because Rashford at striker just isn't it. He needs to be out wide to be effective, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer or anything like that, but that kind of exposes him to how lethal he can be. The greats are, the greater players or the superstars of the world are able, and superstars of the past are able to kind of slot themselves in and still be very can still contribute to the team in many ways. But it seems like once he's at that striker role, he's very lethargic and the contribution isn't there. And then to add to that, I don't think Bruno had a great game at all. Yeah, lacked a lot of patience. Took a lot of untimely shots. That could have held up the play a little longer to open up to a better opportunity. I think that's what happened prior to the Alex Iwobi goal. Late in the game, yes, fair chance for him to take that shot right outside the box, but I think he could have recycled it and gotten a better opportunity there. Maybe he was trying to catch the goalie off guard because it was a quick change in possession. But I think, I don't think Bruno had a great game either. It took an unmarked Harry Maguire off a rebound, for you guys to score a goal against a Paulinho-less Fulham. So quite disappointing, I'd say.
Yeah, I want to take you up on that point. Marcus Rashford starting as a striker. Yeah, it looks like he's very on his day. I would say he's one of the better players in his position, and one of the for sure league's best players in when he's in full flow. But when he does go back to a striker position, of course, it's I guess a natural for him. He is limited in that sense, and you would expect a player of his quality and his time at the club that he would be able to adjust, but it just hasn't hasn't, of course, played out that way. Bruno Fernandes, like you mentioned, is again, Gio, just raw decision making. It felt like because they were missing that target man that they're, I guess, now used to playing with for Hodgland, it kind of falls apart. And so I'm actually surprised they didn't even just try putting Scott McTominay there up as a body and just pretend he's Hodgland and just play off of him. But ultimately, of course, have to give credit to Fulham, who got the gritty goal through Kambasi. I think it was a corner. He hit it off. He had the shot. The rebound came back to him, and of course, his quick thinking and movement just rifled that top roof of the net. No chance for Onana, and then the Alex Iwobi dagger at the end. Man, that's just, when you said pain, Gio, I think that encapsulates how all Man U fans would feel. No disrespect to, of course, Alex Iwobi, who is a decent player. But Mac, I guess walk us through your thoughts on this game.
Alex Iwobi in the Theater of Your Dreams, in doing some Fergie time, is a sentence I thought I would never say it, really. I'll be honest with you. I think what you highlighted, Gio, I think is absolutely the first point, is when you look at their offensive kind of breakout of how they play when they've been successful under Erik ten Hag, and when Marcus Rashford has been at his best, is when he's playing off a striker. Even though we kind of may joke about Weghorst last season playing for Manchester United and I guess his quality of striker, but the role that he plays in terms of holding the play up, isolating a position, be able to create knockdown situations, and create opportunities for his teammates around him to be successful was what he brought. And Højlund does that, but so much more, right? So if you take that away and Rashford's not able to kind of play off somebody else, you see kind of the step down of where he's not at the ceiling of when he can play at his best if he's in that position. So I think it's unfair for him to be in that position in the first place. Of course, they had no choice. FFP put them in a position where they couldn't sign a striker. Martial's injured. And even if Martial's available, is he the type of player to do that? No. So again, it seems like a lose-lose situation in there. With that being said, though, Fulham are a good team. They're not at the bottom of the table. Marco Silva is a great manager with a good, consistent squad and able to create opportunities and have harmed other big teams around them, right? So I'm not to say that it's not a good result. It's disappointing, though, to come back and get that goal through Harry Maguire, then to easily concede just a couple of minutes later off of. It's really tough. I don't know who individually to blame. Harry Maguire for initially stepping out, Dallo, and I think it's the kid that came on, Forson, if that's the kid's name correctly. Gio, correct me if I'm wrong. But yes, Forson, my apologies. Yes, he came on as a substitute for Eriksson. So being able to kind of just slide by and, allow Iwobi to go into his right foot, tough moments there. So I think that's the disappointing part, where if you come out with the draw in this fixture, it's not the most ideal of result, but it's not a shame to pick up just a draw against this Fulham team, given how things have gone thus far this season for them. So the disappointed is to cough it up, like I said, just a couple minutes later. So overall, disappointing on that end, but it's been a consistent theme from Manchester United when they haven't had that target man as a striker. So until Højlund comes back, I think this is a big concern for them, and why, as we may have talked about previously, if you would have asked me to rank the 4, 5, 6 of Villa, Tottenham, and Manchester United, for me, they're that 6 team. They're close enough, and what we talked about in a break, where their goal difference, again, it's been a joke so far this season for a lot of our mutual friends just talking about it. It's at 0. They've just been clinical in those right moments, and they've got the lucky break or two. And unfortunately, in this situation, it kind of came back, the dice rolled up the other way and put them in a tough position. So until they get full back healthy, I think they're just going to keep rolling that dice, hope all luck phase out for them and they can stay in the race. But if it doesn't, I think that they're going to be further and further down the table. Or no, not down the table, but in that same spot and not climbing to catch the teams that are above them.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that hurts the most if you're a Man U fan, that in a week where Aston Villa, which we'll cover a little bit after this, got a win. Spurs didn't play because Chelsea, of course, were their opponents and they played in the Carabao Cup Final. Man U are facing Man City in the weekend. So in terms of Premier League, it's looking like it's going to be 2 losses in a row. No disrespect, Gio, to Manchester United, but that's just how it is, unfortunately.
Well, don't speak that to existence. Great, we're a Man U fan this coming weekend. Let's have a positive spin on here, you know?
That's fair. But I guess on that note, Gio, I guess with regards to chasing the top 4, it would have been, of course, a great way to go into the Man City game, having won this game. So with that being said, with Aston Villa winning, what are your, I guess, initial reactions to Man U achieving a top 4 spot at this point in the season?
Although grim, nothing's really impossible. They're able to do it now. With the injuries, again, to key players, it could have been anyone but Højlund. I think would have been better for Man United. I think in an overall sense, you can pick anyone on the back line and say, okay, this guy's injured. Great, we can still survive. You can take anyone, I would argue, in the midfield, pluck about, say, injured, still survive. I think rotational wise, I think they would be able to get by. There'll be tougher games, there'll be great games, but they'll be able to skate by. But just the lack of striker causing the others to play, poorly, is just so evident right now. So, obviously you're hoping for losses from Tottenham and hoping for losses from Villa, but Villa has been in such great form, and when they get on a roll, it's hard for them to stop, especially how well Douglas Luiz has been playing. And then I don't know, Spurs iffy. I think Man U can definitely still finish above Spurs. I don't think Spurs are the shakier of the two. But again, there is a lot of pressure for Villa in itself to uphold that top 4 spot. So I think they'll be wary of teams chasing after them. So it's still possible. I'm not counting it out already. But it's going to be tough for sure, given the key, the stature of the injury and how key it was in this game.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's just a matter of how Villa and Spurs continue to do. Well, it's different now because Villa, I think, the way they started the season was so good that even though they did pick up a couple of losses and poor results in the last couple of weeks, with another win against Nottingham Forest, they look back into the groove. And so, I mean, you can only go based off of your last couple of performances. It still looks like they are able to put away multiple goals in a game. So if that's the case, you're always going to kind of favor them to get over the hump, especially against the quote-unquote lesser teams. But of course, they were 4-2 winners against Nottingham Forest. Goals coming from, of course, Ollie Watkins, 2 from Douglas Luiz, who Gio mentioned, of course, has continued to have a great goal-scoring season. And I think it was also Liam Bailey at the end that scored the 4th. Were you impressed with the Villa performance this time out, Mac? What are your thoughts on this game?
absolutely impressed. Of course, you came away with scoring 4 goals, 4-2 win, facing Nottingham Forest, who are in a relegation battle. So it was expected that way. Full credit to Leon Bailey. I thought he was phenomenal. That first assist to Ollie Watkins was absolutely pure class there. Love to be able to see that. And I think he is one of more of the underrated players in the setup, where a lot of the credits go to Douglas Luiz, a lot of credits go to Watkins, but he is really kind of that third peg for me, where if he's playing well and the other two are playing well at the same time, offensively, they can be where you have the distributor, you have the attacking pace, you have the winger, you have the clinical striker, you have a whole lot of flexibility in your attack. So if all three of them are playing well at the same time, they're a tough opponent. To be honest, though, I think I'm looking a little bit sus on them, because when you look at the game, you look at the result, you look at the final score, you look at kind of the shots total, you look at the expected goals. Yeah, Villa were very good. But watching the game, it seemed like as the game got further along, Nottingham Forest really found out that Villa high line. And if it wasn't for shooting themselves in their foot, really, to kind of concede that 4th goal, I wouldn't have been surprised to Forest to come back and potentially tie it up at 3-3, because that high line has put them in a position where throughout the course of now, not just the season, but in game, where teams are getting used to it. Teams are getting that timing of run. We see like Anthony Alanga to be able to get in behind, right? Or whomever it may be, depending on the team. I'm a little bit worried about that for them, is that if that's a continuing trend against a bottom of the barrel team right now, let's be honest, a team that in the relegation battle, against the bigger games coming up, where they're still trying to implement their style and still want to be able to kind of compress the pitch as much as possible, is that going to be consistently found out, or is there going to be that second gear? Something I've talked about before. I haven't seen it yet from them. So great result now. Impressed that they were able to score the amount of goals that they did. Kudos to them. But the questions I still have still exist, because realistically, they should have won this game 4-0 or 3-0. But because of their play style, because of the way that they've been kind of teams that figure it out how to be able to play against them, they're creating closer contests than need be. So impressed, yes, but I'm still a little skeptical, and that's why, like I said, I would not argue that Manchester United or other teams around them are out of the race to get in the top 4, because there are key holes and key Achilles heels for both this Villa team and, of course, the Spurs team. So great result, but we'll wait and see how they perform against the bigger teams if they are going to stay in the position that they currently are in.
So a quick word on Forest. I just want to mention the Divock Origi assist to Morgan Gibbs-White, of course, former Liverpool player. What a ball! And of course, good for him that Gibbs-White was able to put it away. And yeah, it looked like Forest definitely had their chances to come back, but Aston Villa ultimately getting the win. And I think one of those standout players, Gio, Douglas Luiz, you highlighted it here. Question for you then, Gio. Let's say Douglas Luiz. A lot of eyes are on him already. I think there are rumors of him potentially going to City, and maybe at other destinations around the Premier League as well. Do you think the Aston Villa getting into a Champions League position would affect his decision to stay with that team? I'm kind of putting you on the spot, Gio, but just wanted to get your thoughts, because of course we're kind of speaking highly on this. Do you think that would have an effect on him staying with this team, or do you think, regardless of what happens with Aston Villa, Douglas Luiz likely moving on to a different type of club come the summer?
No, I think absolutely. I think it has everything to do with whether he stays or goes. I think a lot of these players, when they're looking at their options, they are looking for European football. And if the club is providing you European football, and they are providing you this sort of freedom to kind of own the pitch and the freedom to lead the team in a sense, it's hard to just pass up that opportunity. Obviously, Villa was the team that kind of gave him the opportunity to do so. And I believe that he will, show some loyalty in that sense. But I think he'll give it 1 year. If it doesn't work out in that sense, I think he should still be a very coveted player. For any Premier League team to sign. And I think he'll earn himself a move regardless. But yeah, no, I think he would give him a chance. Villa would also in turn, receive, quite a bit more funding, to sign some players to kind of, match the level of play.
Exactly. 25 years old. Even if he stays another year, still entering the prime of his career. So I think, Mac, same question to you, Douglas Luiz. What are your thoughts?
So the interesting part was January last year when Steven Gerrard was just leaving to get in charge. Steven Gerrard wasn't playing him, right? And that was one of the main criticisms of him as a manager, where you saw Douglas Luiz come on when he was subbed on for some moments and he would take corners. He would just try to score to be able to kind of show off. That's more of the player that he was. And Arsenal actually came in for the final day in January last season. And again, that means they wouldn't have to have signed Jorginho, which would have been nice for me, and that would have been a nice duo between him and Declan Rice. I'll be honest with you. But instead, they signed him to a 3-year contract extension. So he's actually locked to the club till 2026. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make it in Champions League. You're going to see a bump in pay. So he's going to be inclined to stay. Maybe they sign him on very similar to what other players do, where you may be looking at the Oshmans or players like that. Or, I'll sign on for the extra, I'll sign a contract extension. You can announce it, tag one more year on. I get a big bump in salary right now, but I still go next season. You know what I mean? So everyone really wins in that situation where you can still get the kind of his feet wet in the Champions League, stay with the club that kind of got him there, get the extra pay, and still leave to a bigger club. So I agree with the both of you. The interesting part would be is the amount of money that it'll cost to be able to kind of pry him out and what teams can really afford that and who would go in from. Let's assume in terms of the Premier League, and because that's what we really focus on. Let's assume Chelsea's out because if they spend any more money of over 100 mil on midfield, I think there might be a riot somewhere in London. That's my assumption. I think the interesting question comes for Liverpool. I feel like he could be an interesting fit as the 6, as one of the 2 options there. So that's a team I'm eyeing. I understand he was linked to City. I understand he was linked to Arsenal. But if rotations do happen for Liverpool, they do bring a new managers in, I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe the age profile at that point might not necessarily fit what they want, but might be a good building block considering the rest of the midfielders you fit around him. So I know I'm kind of stealing your thunder a little bit there, right? But I think that could be a good fit in and around when he does leave. In all likelihood, not next season, but the season afterwards.
No, I completely agree with your take there. Could very much be at the right price, I think. A great replacement or a great addition to the Liverpool side, or any side in general. Even just looking at some big clubs around the world. Bayern Munich were recently looking for a center defensive mid and we're ready to splash.
They have Eric Dyer. Why would you don't need anything else, right? No.
That's correct, exactly. But if they come calling, I think Douglas Luiz would. I think he would strongly consider that. And that being said, with the age gap, 26 next year, Wataru Endo from Liverpool, 31 years old currently. So the fact that he was able to get a deal at Liverpool maybe shows that there could be another change in sort of the thinking, especially with Klopp leaving around recruitment and contracts there. But of course, we'll see what happens. And just wanted to, of course, give that a little bit of thought as a full house that we have today. But guys, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well. houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Thursday when we bring you guys a new evergreen pod. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Thanks for listening, guys.
See you guys soon.